Hi everyone, welcome back to Farrand Film and to another weekly box office update for UK and Ireland. This is the update for the 26th of August, week beginning the 26th of August. It's a little bit later than usual, mainly because yesterday was a bank holiday, so I'm assuming the sort of the counting didn't happen until later on. But it's been a very interesting week. It's a very interesting box office to see where things landed, especially given that there were two pretty significant new releases last week. But the ones landing just outside of the top 10, so the Pulp Fiction reissue went in at number 15, the Amazing Spider-Man reissue went in at 14, Harold and the Purple Crayon is still kicking around, he landed at 13, Stree 2 dropped down to 12, and Trap dropped down to 11 as well. So let's get into the top 10. So at number 10 is Twisters, 6 weeks in the chart. I did actually say that this would drop out, but it's still hanging on in there. It grossed 280 grand at the weekend, bringing its total so far of just over 13.5 million. It's just under a million away from pipping, I think it's Godzilla vs. Kong, Godzilla X Kong, to the post of that number 10 spot in the UK charts for the year. I don't know if it's going to do it. I don't know if it's going to get another million. There is something coming up this weekend that might mean that it does get the million, but it's done incredibly well. I think more so than anyone sort of anticipated. It's just been a big fun summer blockbuster. So still hanging on in the down 2 places from last week's number 8 at number 10. At number 9, down from number 4, so quite a significant drop for Coraline remastered in 3D. So just over 2.2, actually just under 2.3 million it's grossed so far, about 400 grand at the weekend, 2 weeks in the chart. It's proving to be popular, it's proving to be popular with families, and the kids that have seen it before and know that they love it, and they're going out and checking it out again. So Coraline's still hanging on in there, might remain there next week as well. At number 8, the first new entry from last week, so this is The Crow. Now, I thought The Crow would open a bit bigger than this. I thought it would open a bit more successfully than this. Obviously, the thing that was going against it, and I mentioned this last week, is that I'd not heard anything last Tuesday when I recorded last week's update about The Crow in terms of review or sort of initial reactions or anything like that. And it tends to be the later that you get to a film opening and nothing sort of word of mouth wise has come out, the worse the film tends to be, the bad the film is. And unfortunately, I went to see this on Friday. I saw this and the other new release on Friday. And unfortunately, it's just not very good. It's a mess. It's a mess for the majority of the film. I would say that actually in the final third it does pick up, and I really enjoyed the final third. The final third is actually quite bloody and brutal and violent. For the first third, he's walking around in a pink hoodie and a pink jumpsuit because he's at a rehabilitation centre and he's looking like Machine Gun Kelly. And in the second one, he's meeting Shelley and they're going through stuff. And as you will know if you've read the comics and you've seen the other one, obviously the idea of the Crow is that he's come back from the afterlife to sort of wreak havoc and seek revenge on the people that killed him and his girlfriend. This is a completely different story to the film. Now, I assumed that meant that was because it was adapting the source material, the graphic novel, a little bit more closely. But having done like a little bit of research and a little bit of digging into it, the story in the graphic novel is essentially the story that you get in the sort of 1994 original, whereas this is completely different. They're trying to do something completely different with this. And on the one hand, it's like, I'm glad that they tried to do something different, that they weren't just sort of mimicking and sort of recreating shot for shot the original, but it did nothing for it. It's just a mess. It's an absolute mess of a film. I'm not saying that it is the worst of the year. For me, that's still Borderlands. To be fair, I would prefer The Crow over Night Swim. I would prefer The Crow over In a Violent Nature. So it's down the bottom, but it's not all the way down the bottom. But that's The Crow at number 8. At number 7, still holding on strong, is Inside Out 2. Now, this is 11 weeks in the chart. 604 grand it grossed at the weekend, which is actually 100 grand more than it did last week. So even though it's still 11 weeks in the chart, it's still grossing money, it's still doing extremely well. Just under £57 million in the UK that it's grossed. I went to see this morning with my wife and with Ruby, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it immensely. I didn't enjoy it as much as I enjoyed the first one. It's not made my top 10 of the year. There are films that I prefer above it. It lands in around about 12, but I enjoyed it massively, and I can see why it's doing so well, because it's a hit for audiences, and actually there's stuff in there for the adults to enjoy as well. So that's Inside Out 2, still holding on at number 7. At number 6, the other new entry, and this shocked me. This shocked me massively that Blink Twice only went in at 6. Now, for those of you who are sort of following this, my prediction last week was that this was going to go in at number 1, and here it is at number 6. So clearly something's just not hit the audience. Now, in terms of the two films that I went to go and see on the Friday, I sort of did them back to back. The Crow was an IMAX screening, and there were about 8 people, including me, in that screening. Blink Twice was a standard screen, relatively smaller screen in the view. I think it was just because of the sort of time that I was watching it. There were other screens around it that were showing it, but it was pretty full, and you're talking at least 60, 70 seats at that point, maybe even 100 actually. So I just assumed that, the word of mouth had got out about this film. It was Channing Tatum, people were going to go out and see it, but for whatever reason, landing in at number 6. Now, the film itself, I think, needs to do much better than this. I think it deserves much better than this. I really, really enjoyed this film, and I don't want it to end up being one of those films that, like, it's gone in at 6. Now, typically, if a film was to enter a chart at number 6, you assume that the week after it's going to drop out completely. I just hope that there's enough word of mouth, good value about this film that people have got to sort of getting out there, and especially when the thing that I'm going to come to later happens at the weekend, maybe more people will go out and see it. It didn't even get close to 1 million. It got 750 grand at the weekend, so I'm hoping, really hoping, that it has a better second week next week. Number 5 really surprised me. New entry, Kneecap. I didn't think Kneecap would do this well. I knew that people were going to go out and see it, but I actually pitched that it would open outside of the top 10. And Number 5 is an amazing sort of entry point into a chart for an indie film like this, for a film that's distributed by Curzon, going against things like the Warner Brothers distributed Blink Twice, So again, it's done incredibly well, just over £1 million grossed at the weekend. I don't know if it's going to maintain that. I don't know if it was more of a sort of like instant, this is when it's coming out, this is when people are going to go and see it. So we'll see where it lands next week. But as for the top 4, there is no change, as you can imagine. So up 1 place from last week is Despicable Me 4. So it's grossed just under 42 million, which now pips it into the 3rd place of the year, beating Dune 2. But I'm going to come to that chart in just a little bit. So again, it's still doing well, 7 weeks in the chart, just under 1.5 million at the weekend. Deadpool and Wolverine, I should say, not versus, holding strong at number 3. So grossing 1.77 million at the weekend, gross to date of 52 million, 5 weeks in the chart. So again, it's still a juggernaut. It's still sort of doing extremely well in the theatres. Holding its place at number 2 is It Ends With Us, grossing 1.8 million. Its gross to date is 15.8 million, and that is the look of expression on my face where Adam's just realised that it's 15.8 million, and that might mean that it is actually in the top 10 of the year, and I've not changed the table that you're about to see. So we'll see it together, and I'll figure it out from there, and I'll edit it for next week. 3 weeks in the chart for It Ends With Us. It's done incredibly well. And number 1, Alien Romulus. Now, I saw Alien on Thursday. I thought this was great. It was a proper Alien film. Now, the thing going into it that me and Sam were talking about was that people were sort of pitching it underneath Alien and underneath Aliens, which I totally understand. Totally get that. It's not as good as those two, but I would say it is the 3rd best film in the franchise. Now, whether or not you see that as slim pickings, whether or not you see that as, well, there's not actually much else going for it, so of course it's going to be the 3rd. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was extremely effective in some of the set pieces that it had, and it just rattled along at a pace. I will admit, I will join the discourse and say that I'm surprised at the turn that it took towards the end, but I will leave that where it is. But I enjoyed it immensely, and I thought Kaylee Spaney was absolutely fantastic, as she has been in all the other stuff that she's been in. But this grossed 2 million at the weekend, bringing its total gross in the UK to 8.2 million. So again, pretty solid for 2 weeks in the chart, and it's going to be sticking around for a little bit longer, I imagine. So the predictions versus the actuals, massively wrong with Blink Twice, saying that it'd open at 1 and it went in at 6. Alien Romulus, 1 step down. I said The Crow would go in at 3 and it went in at 8. It Ends With Us, I said 4 and it was at 2. Deadpool 5 and it was at 3. Coraline, I overestimated Coraline, and so I said it would go higher. Despicable Me 4, again, I underestimated that. I said the 17 Follow Again concert movie would go in at 8. Didn't even chart. What happened to that thing? Inside Out 2, I, again, underestimated, and Trap, I was close, but I think week on week, this might be the worst one that I've done. And I'll be totally honest, when I got to doing it before, I thought, should I actually bother doing this or not? Because I'm just pants at predicting. But we'll get to where it is. 2024 top 10. Yes, so there it is. So that number 10 spot, possibly even that number 9 spot, should be It Ends With Us. And I apologise, that's an oversight on my fault. I will pick up on that and I will change that for next week. But It Ends With Us, with its £15 million gross now, should be in the top 10 of the year. And Twisters, like I say, is coming quite close. So again, I'll rectify that for next week's chart. But then the one up the top is that Despicable Me 4 is dethroned Doom Part 2 for its bronze place in third place for the top 10 films of the year so far in terms of their gross. Now, next week's a bit of a strange one. There are a sea, as you can see on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, of reissues and re-releases that are happening this week. And like I could be bothered putting posters on every single slide for all these, so I'm just going to reel them off. So, Ocean's 11, the George Clooney remake, the Lego Batman movie, Batman Mask of the Phantasm, The Terminator, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and The Italian Job. Now, the Batman films are because of the Batman 85th anniversary celebrations that are happening this year. Spider-Man is still carrying on the rest of the Spider-Man reissues. Italian Job is a 55th anniversary reissue. I think The Terminator might be an anniversary one as well. Not too sure on Ocean's 11. I think it's just because it's a 4K restoration. So there's a lot of reissues this week. There's also some new releases. So this is Afraid, which is a new horror film that is basically about a new smart home AI called AIA. And obviously, with any sort of artificial intelligence in the film, it develops a self-awareness and it carries on from there. So that's Afraid. That's a horror film that's out this week. There is a foreign language film. I can't remember which language this is in. Apologies. I think it might be Icelandic. But it's a romantic and thrilling story that spans several decades. Touch follows one widower's emotional journey to find his first love who disappeared. Sing Sing is also being released this week. Now, Sing Sing is an early Oscar contender, specifically for Best Actor for Colman Domingo, although there have been some rumblings about a film nomination and even a director nomination as well. So this is the story of Divine G, who is imprisoned at Sing Sing for a crime he didn't commit, and he finds his purpose by acting in a theatre group alongside other incarcerated men. So that's Sing Sing. And Close to You, starring Elliot Page. So when he returns home for his father's birthday, a man finds that his family is struggling to accept his transition. Now, this film has already been reviewed in certain places. It think it is Elliot Page's first film role since his sort of I can't think of the correct word to say. So since he transitioned would be the right word, I suppose. So I think it is his first film role, and from what I understand, it's a very powerful performance. There's a lot of sort of truth in it that goes on in the film. So I am intrigued to sort of check this one out and see where this one ends up. I'm not sure how big of a release it's getting. I don't know if it's just going to be a sort of straightforward art house release or whether or not it's going to land in some multiplexes, but we'll have to see when it comes to next week. And the last one that I had to prompt. Now, I would forgive anybody for completely bypassing this, but my 2 years at Cineworld Ashton told me otherwise. This is Andre Rieu, The Power of Love, his 2024 Maastricht concert. Now, usually I'd look at this and think, all right, so it's showing for one day, I think. There's possibly two. I think there's another repeat viewing of it later in the week. It's not going to chart. This is the Silver Pound. This is where all the oldies, God bless them, get to the cinemas, grab a coffee, get a cup of tea, get a biscuit, and go and watch him do his stuff. Rico Suave, he brings in that Silver Pound, and he's going to chart next week. And I've put him quite high in the chart next week because these are really, really successful screenings that happen, and the reason why they keep doing them is because they keep making money. So he's gonna be in the chart next week. So the one thing to mention, the one thing that I've sort of been saying, oh, there's something happening this weekend and all this kind of stuff. So on Saturday, the 31st of August, which is this coming Saturday, across cinemas in the UK, it will once again be National Cinema Day. So to experience the joy of cinema from just £4 a ticket at all participating venues and all formats, so 3D, IMAX and 4DX. So if you want to go and watch a film at the IMAX, go on Saturday because it's going to cost you £4. It's going to cost you the same as it would cost you a standard cinema ticket. So National Cinema Day was launched in 2022. It was an immediate success. There was 1.46 million admissions on that single day. This increased to 1.56 last year when they did it, and they're hoping that again it's going to increase again. So if you think about that there's going to be potentially 1.5 million people going to the cinema this Saturday because the tickets have been reduced. Imagine what that's going to do for the chart next week. It's going to be immense. So again, this is the time to go and see these films that you're missing out on. So with that being said, this is what I'm thinking for next week. The Crow drops out of the top 10. Close to You opens just outside the top 10. Twisters is still there at 10. Coraline at 9, Blink Twice at 8, Sing Sing at 7, Despicable Me 4 at 6, Deadpool and Wolverine at 5, It Ends With Us at 4, Andre Rieu's going right up to number 3, Afraid will open at 2, and Alien Romulus will hold on for a third week at that number 1 spot. Now, Twisters, I'm saying, is going to stay in purely because I have seen that on Saturday, with the National Cinema Day, it is getting some IMAX showings again. And there might be enough sort of people interested in catching it again that are interested in catching it at the IMAX. So we will see. Okay? National Cinema Day on Saturday. If you're thinking about going to the cinema and you'd pipped it for Sunday, go on Saturday. It's going to be far cheaper for you. It's £4 a ticket in any format at participating venues. As far as I'm aware, all of the major chains are doing it. So your Cineworld, your View, your Odeon. Some independent chains are doing it as well. So Picture House and things like that. Have a look at your local listings. See what the bookings look like. And I highly, highly recommend that you go out and watch that film that you've been thinking all summer, I really need to catch up with that. Get out, get to the cinema on Saturday and watch it. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. Stay safe, look after each other, and I will see you next week.